You are now witnessing the downfall of Twisted Metal. After last year's competition destroyed most of the world, Calypso, wanting to destroy all of his enemies, decided to host another worldwide Twisted Metal competition, this time taking place at the remaining cities and landmarks that weren't ravaged in the last competition. However, what the citizens of the world and the players of Twisted Metal didn't realize was that Calypso wasn't just going to bring the world down with him, he was also going to bring his game down with him too. Oh, you've done it this time, Calypso. Now there's no turning back.
Calypso! Calypso, what have you done? What have you done?
You're tuning in to the J-Blast Network. Oh yeah, welcome to the next level. After the success of Twisted Metal 2, it was only natural that a sequel needed to be made. This seemed like a simple job, but it turned out to be a complete nightmare. You see, Single Track, the original developers of Twisted Metal, went on to work on other projects, with some never releasing. This was because they were bought out by another developer, but with them gone, a new developer had to step up to the plate. So who was hungry for it? Who was ready to commit to continuing the Twisted Metal legacy? That developer would be 989 Studios. Now, to some Twisted Metal fans, just saying that name gives them a heart attack. But let me explain what exactly happened here. You see, Single Track still owned the engine used for the first Twisted Metal games, including the assets, meaning that this new game would need a new engine. And that's fine when you're making a new game series, the time you are given to make a new game series. But this was the third entry of a huge franchise that was going to get the development time of a sequel instead of the development time of a game that was made from scratch. So just think about this. You had to make a new engine, new car models, new endings, new levels, all within less than a year. Probably about 7 to 8 months. Everything brand new. No reuse of assets, no reuse of anything. And you had to make sure that the physics of the game matched with everything and that everything could run well. And you had to make sure that it could include 4-player multiplayer and new features, because guess what? This was a sequel. It had to include new things. It had to be bigger and better. I'm telling you right now, anybody in that position would struggle. And 989 Studios did struggle trying to recreate the physics from Twisted Metal 2. And from that knowledge, you have to admit, that's pretty impressive. They were able to release a game that wasn't really buggy at all on release and still had tons of content, somewhat more content than the previous game. But sadly, those things don't matter when you gotta spend money on the game itself. And when that day came, it brought a shift in Twisted Metal, as it did not feel like the previous game at all, and it felt worse than ever before. I mean, you had people slandering this game left and right, saying that it controlled worse than the first game, had worse characters than the first game, and the cutscenes were completely abysmal. Yeah, this game was a whole mess on release, but despite people saying that this is the worst game in the series, this is actually the best selling game in the series. Now, there are many factors to that, and most of it is because it was riding off of the hype of Twisted Metal 2. But maybe to your surprise and my surprise, there are some people to this day who say they like the game, and honestly, I want to know why. Because you see, this is the J-Blast Network, where we play the games to see how really good or bad they are. And I gotta know what the hell exactly happened with this game. So come along with me, Jay, and tune in to the J-Blast Network as we dive into the destructive case of Twisted Metal 3!
I am Calypso. Each year I gather the 12 worthiest drivers to face off in the Twisted Metal competition. They must face each other and some of my friends to claim the ultimate prize. I grant a single wish, whatever the winner asks for. To the losers, death. Welcome to Twisted Metal.
Alright people, you already know what it is with a Twisted Metal game. The core elements are still here, all the weapons are here, and the command attacks are back too. However, the healing command is no longer available, which, considering what this game is about to put you through, is a real disappointment. But you see, what sets Twisted Metal 3 apart from the other two is its physics, and good God almighty, they destroyed the controls. Let's start with the movement. What you're going to notice immediately is how slow you are driving. Even at top speed, you're as slow as a Whataburger after a Friday night football game. And that's for the faster cars too. There's a reason for this, and they'll get explained in the future section. But the slowness isn't the only problem. The turning has also been slowed down. It's like they tried to make these controls like a simulation racer rather than a battle racer. But if I wanted to play Gran Turismo, I would just go play Gran Turismo. In Twisted Metal 2, you could turn almost on the dime, which made traversal when you were getting shot at or trying to turn around and attack somebody much easier, because this was a battle racer. The game demanded freedom of movement, but now you can't even do a proper 360 without turning in a wide circle, making the battles these slow, boring chases where most of the time you're just trying to get around your opponent. Yeah, no, this is absolute garbage. But I haven't even gotten to the worst part of physics, and that's flipping over. Whether you go over a small ramp or hill, or you slightly bump into another car, you will flip over. And no, you can't flip back over. You just have to wait till they spawn you back to normal, killing all the momentum you had. You can also get hit while you're flipped, which will be the cause of your death many a time. God damn it, man, who thought this was a good idea? Here you had a system that just needed to be replicated, and instead they tried to fix something that was never broken to begin with. And now we got some of the worst controlling cars in the series. Hell, I bet Smokey from Friday could have added the machine gun to his busted ass whip and wiped this entire competition at once. Yeah, even with his car broken down, people. Terrible physics equal terrible gameplay. But that's only the least of the game's problems. And oh boy, we're just getting started. If there's one thing this game does slightly right, it's the roster. And by that, I mean most of the returning character choices, because the details of those characters have some issues. But let's start with the newcomers. Firestarter, the flamethrower pyromaniac. They really just took Thumper's move from the last game and gave it to this guy. But I feel like he has a better vehicle for it. And out of all of the characters, he's probably the best controlling and the best starter character for anyone starting the game. No pun intended. Flower Power, the plant queen with the revitalization of the forest is her dream. Too bad she's absolute garbage, being one of the weakest characters with a terrible special, but having this weak ass missile. She definitely has the power of a flower. Club Kid, the juiced out DJ ready to party all night. But this ain't a party, boy, this is a death battle. And for the least focused character, he has the most brutal special in the game. Club Kid creates a vortex that swallows all drivers into it until it explodes and does hella damage. It has nice range too, which makes it hella hard to fight against him with, but hella good to play as him with. Definitely a character carried by his moveset, because his story absolutely sucks. Augur, the pissed off construction worker ready to kill for all the work the Twisted Metal competition has made for him and his crew. This guy replaces Mr. Slam and is better than that cheap garbage eating buffoon. Augur power drills his opponents to death like a Twisted Metal shish kebab, and he's pretty fast for his size too, making him dangerous when he tries to drill you. The rest are returning characters, including Warthog, Mr. Grimm, Hammerhead, Thumper, Spectre, Roadkill, and Axel, with some of the racers changing drivers. The only problem is the new physics affect the old drivers the most. Hammerhead is now driven by Granny Dread, an old lady who's tired of the Twisted Metal competition disturbing her peace. Well, that's too damn bad. She should have stayed shut up in her house, because good lord, they have ruined this vehicle. Slow and useless. What's the point of flattening someone if you can't even catch them? Spectre is driven by Lance Wilder, who might as well be the same guy from the last game, because they basically have the same personality and the same weapon, just as garbage as it used to be. And then there's Outlaw, now controlled by both siblings who dyed their hair blonde. I don't get it. But I guess double the cops means double the power, because their weapon remains the same, but it has more range. This is one of the weapons that's actually benefited from the slow pace of the gameplay. You know, I'm gonna have to stop, man. I can't even do the voice for the rest of them. This shit is just very disappointing. Roadkill got worse with this special, as it acts like a Modar, which means it's freaking useless. It's already hard to catch people possible, let alone hit them with an explosion at an angle. Dumper now has a sound wave attack to replace his fire, but it doesn't differ much, and Warthog is pretty similar to how he was before. Now, I got some choice words for Mr. Grimm and Axel. Mr. Grimm is still very weak, but they buffed the hell out of his special move. Truly a glass biker, and luckily he can run away fast and not die in 5 seconds. And then we have Axel, my boy. What have they done to you? Good God Almighty. You see, because of how they butchered the physics, it butchered this character as well. Now Axel is slow, takes 50 million years to turn, and is just a big ass target with a hit me sign sitting in the middle of the stage. And I know some of y'all might be saying, what about his special? Well, what about it? They made it freaking garbage. It doesn't do as much damage, and it barely gets opponents off you. They have completely ripped the limbs off this character, and this is a guy who already lost all of his limbs. That is fucked up. Why'd it have to be my character? Of course, I saved the best for last, Sweet Tooth, who still needs a code to unlock him. I don't know why you even put him on the front of the cover in that case, but sadly he also suffers from this system. But at least they upgraded his special by giving him a remote controlled missile that with positioning time right can get multiple drivers, and it's pretty strong. So yeah, as you can see, for the most part, if you weren't made for this game, then your kit got completely ruined. It all stacks up, or should I say it all falls down. The physics are trash, so the characters become trash. And if that's the quality so far, then just how bad can the levels be? I'm gonna let my main man Michael Jackson, the king of pop, explain to you just how bad these levels are.
There was doo-doo feces thrown all over the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and it stunk so bad.
And you know what? I wouldn't even say most of these levels are bad. They're just boring, bland, and uninspired. Let's start with Hollywood. Once again, for a third time, we started out in Los Angeles. Lacking a little creativity, aren't we? Well, it doesn't matter where it is because it's complete garbage. The level design, I mean. With a mostly flat underpass and a tall bridge in the middle of the map with a steep incline that you have to drive up. Great. Something to make your car drive slower. To the level's credit, it has many teleporters to keep the flow of gameplay, but that still doesn't fix this awkward design. Washington, D.C. Now here you're thinking, we could go through the White House and fight on the front lawn, or even go through some historical monuments, like the Lincoln Memorial. But let me spoil it for you. I'm gonna let you guess for a second. Did you guess it? Yeah, you fight in front of the Capitol building on a flat ground, and that's it. That is the entire level. Completely flat and pairing beside a couple of stairs in the back of the map. You know what? There's a level like this in 2. Holland, but at least it was level 7. It had more structures and it wasn't full of nothing. I mean, damn, they even try with this one? We fight our first boss here too, Darkseid, returning from the first game except not playable anymore. And he's tough at first until you realize you can just keep running away as he drives aimlessly over the bland map. Truly genius design right here. Hangar 18. Here you have another cool concept fumbled by overly simple design and just boring gameplay. All this level is a circle in a freaking game where turning takes a lifetime and a half. You can imagine just how fun this is. If you shoot all the 4 switches, you can get to the top of the UFO, where you can go to the top of the circle, and wow, now you get to explore the circle on the top of the map. How intriguing. Hey, here's a good idea. Why not make some space in the UFO, you know, like make the level more intriguing to fight in, so you go in the UFO, maybe have close quarter combat, and then come out of the UFO and have to drive around it. That'd be a cool concept, right? Well, too bad. It's not in the game. You know, I'm noticing a theme so far. It's like the most interesting parts of these levels are just locked off for no reason. Oh, and this level is not done pummeling you into the ground with this garbage yet. Okay, quick editor's note here. I actually messed up. The regeneration doesn't start on this level. It starts on the North Pole instead. I got them mixed up when I was recording the first session and writing the script for that. Also, there's a weapon on this map called the spaceship. I never got it. I never got footage of it. I never had it used on me. But this weapon apparently is able to just destroy everybody on the ground, even if you have full health, so that's really crazy. Level's still not that great in my opinion, but yeah, sorry for that mistake. Moving on to the North Pole. Freaking North Pole is one of the only good levels in this game, and yes, it still has simple design too, but the elevation carries it, along with Santa's house and workshop being in the middle of the map. Destroying it gives you great weapons like lightning, but it comes at the cost of being on Santa's naughty list. Sorry, Santa. I really like the concept, though it'd be funnier if Santa came out of his house and fought you as a boss in this stage after you destroyed it. Calypso wasn't playing when he was trying to take out the rest of the world, man. You gotta be real evil to fuck with the North Pole. Speaking of Calypso, I think one cool thing that carries this game over too is that Calypso is much more involved in the game. And what I mean by that is at the beginning of every level, Calypso will describe the level to you and warn you about things to come in his own creepy and cryptic way.
like Santa, don't you? Let's say you drop by and put the fat guy out of business for good. Watch out for that mistletoe.
I think that's pretty cool, and it adds a lot of character to Calypso. If that's one thing that this game has as a positive, is that they got Calypso somewhat right, at least in his mannerisms and character. London feels like what DC should have been. You go through some iconic landmarks, destroying them, and there are multiple routes and paths to go on. At first, it felt flat, like the earlier levels, and it kinda is, but when you play it, you start to understand what they want you to drive through, and the different routes of the city actually add more complexity to the gameplay. The only issue is that Big Ben is in the background, and it can be destroyed, but it does nothing to the stage itself. In fact, destroying it may set you up for yourself to be destroyed. They had something similar to this in the New York stage in Twisted Metal 2, but at least then we have to see the Statue of Liberty in the bikini. I don't know if I want to see Big Ben in the bikini. How did it even fit on that thing in the first place? But you get the point. Oh, and guess what? We have a boss fight with Minion, who actually is a challenge because now he's on a stage that has some decent level design. One thing to note about the CPU in this game is that they are more aggressive on healing. When they hit a certain amount of health, they will make a beeline to the nearest health pickup. So my advice is to pick up health even if you don't need it, just to stop those bastards from getting it. Tokyo, wait, hold up. Now I want you all to look at this and tell me, if I didn't say the name of the stage, does this look like Tokyo to you? Hell no. And I swear they just slapped the name on here just to make it sound like an iconic city. Even the level icon in the level select does not appear anywhere on this stage. The gimmick here is that Calypso made a volcano erupt, flooding the city streets. Now this can be appreciated somewhat, as the building levels of the past just made you die if you fell off, but I take that over the level design we have now. Hopping over buildings in these training wheels they call cars without nitro might as well be a death sentence. So let's call lava what it is, a way to mash shitty level design instead of having players constantly fall to their death. There is a secret weapon here with the radar, the giant one in the middle of the map, and it'll aim for the nearest person and completely obliterate them. Now you know players were shitting themselves when the CPU got a hold of this weapon, or their friends. There's also a cool death trap here where if you place a remote bomb on this fan, it blows up and whoever falls in it instantly dies. The best thing to do is to drop the bomb when someone is on it and watch them fall to their doom. So yeah, this level has some cool gimmicks after all. I just wish the level design supported it. Egypt, oh good god, Egypt. Another level with wasted potential. A level going into the desert and pyramids sound awesome, and honestly, the level design here really isn't bad. You get to go inside 2 pyramids. You get to destroy certain Egyptian statues. Hell, you even get one of the coolest secret weapons in the series, but the game's physics completely ruined this level. You will flip over constantly thanks to these hills, and you know what that means. Cheap shots. And nothing is more irritating than getting the advantage and having it ruined because you slightly went off a hill in the wrong way. I really wanted to like this level, and there's some cool stuff here, like being able to go inside the Egyptian ruins and get the exclusive weapon, the Eye, which when placed down activates a laser that shoots from the big pyramid down to wherever you place a small pyramid at, doing heavy damage to everyone in the area. If only you could traverse this level better. If only this level was in a game like Twisted Metal 2, it would be so much more fun. And of course, putting the level out of its misery is another regeneration of older opponents. Why did they have to screw this level up so hard? And finally, we have the blimp, Calypso's blimp. Now this sounds like a badass level for a finale of the game, but bullshit reaches its extremes here. So you have this multi-layer stage, one where you can hit opponents off of the blimp, off of the bottom floor, and knock them down from the top floor. But as you play the stage, you'll begin to notice something. No, that can't be. Enemies constantly regenerate. You see, what you have to do is take out all of these switches that are across the map and are in the secret areas of the map behind these breakable walls, and then you can take everybody out. But these guys will chase you constantly, and just when they die, as you're about to hit the last freaking switch, they freaking respawn. Oh my god. Now you're gonna hear something absolutely crazy from me, and that's that I think this is a great idea for a final level, especially in Calypso's domain. It should be hellish, it should be hard, it should be some of the worst stuff you have to put up with throughout this entire game. Don't get me wrong, Twisted Metal has always been a tough game, and it should remain a tough game, but it should be tough in the sense of difficulty, not in the sense of the game hurting itself. If this game didn't have its terrible controls, its terrible physics, that you're already going to be fighting through hell just to get your character right, then maybe this level would be one of the greatest finale levels in the Twisted Metal series. Because holy crap, man, I can't tell you how many of my deaths were just me trying to get to the switch only to flip over and die. At this point, I had enough. But defeating everyone is not the end. We got one more boss, Primeval, and he can kill you very fast. But as long as you run for him and shoot, you should be good. And hey, you can even knock him off the blimp, which is really cool. But at this point, I have already had enough. Defeating everyone will probably drain your lives and your resources, and you will barely be able to pull out this victory against Primeval. Or you're just gonna have to get your ass kicked and have to restart the entire level over again. Good God. Draining is the word that best describes Twisted Metal 3, and not in a good way. Finally, we made it. We beat the game. I sure hope this ending is worth it.
Axel, last time you wanted to escape the torment of your machine. Now your wish is to become one complete machine. Your wish is granted. Don't worry, Axel. Time flies when you're having fun. I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.
What was that? What did I just watch? All of that work, all that time grinding in this game just to get this garbage. That's not even how the Twisted Metal endings are supposed to work. And guys, this is all of the endings. Our characters get no dialogue. They get no say in what they want. Calypso just tortures the character, and some of these don't even match the description of the characters that they had before you start the game. Let me save you all the trouble of looking up the character motivation, because most of the characters' motivations in this game is just killing Calypso for disturbing their way of life with the Twisted Metal tournament. But these endings have them wishing for something completely different from their goal, leading to their demise. And look at this god-awful CGI cutscene. And don't tell me it was the PS1. Do not tell me it was the PS1, because there were tons of games that had better CGI in 98. Hell, there were better cinematics when the first Twisted Metal released in 96. Maybe animated them is why the endings don't match. I imagine they did have enough time to make elaborate cutscenes, but then why abandon the comic look from Twisted Metal 2? That was a great budget way to show off the stories, and it even fit with the Twilight Zone aesthetic and Twilight Zone-esque writing of those endings. I think the worst victim of this style is Sweet Tooth. Bro, just watch this.
So, Sweet Tooth, your wish is to eat all the candy and ice cream you want? Your wish is granted. You should have brushed between snacks. I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.
Man, what? He's not even a traditional clown. He's supposed to be this psychopathic murderer who just used that clown aesthetic and ice cream van to lure people in. But now he's got a sweet tooth, just like the name. Puns, right? Funny. Was that supposed to make us laugh? Because the only thing I'm laughing at is how god awful these cutscenes are. And that's the least they can do for my entertainment. Oh, and check out Mr. Grimm's ending, man. You can't make this shit up.
Mr. Grimm, you've snatched every soul on the planet but mine. Now you want my soul? Your wish is granted.
Who was in the writer's room, man? Who was writing this garbage? And the worst part is that this does follow the endings of the particular characters from the Twisted Metal 2 ending before, but it just leads to nothing. It leads to absolutely nothing, man. Now, I've been ripping this game to shreds. I know I've been doing it, but maybe there's some redemptive qualities to this mess as we dwell deeper into what this pile of shit has to offer. True to the previous games, there are some extras that are unlocked with cheat codes. Most of them are levels. There are two variations of the warehouse level, which is the level you see the cars fighting on in the menu of the game. That's pretty rad. I love when games do that. However, the level is pretty simple, with the first variation being empty and the second having obstacles, including a loop-de-loop that's pretty jank to drive on. There's also Club Kids Club, which is a giant empty room with wave effects. Woo! Another flat level. They must have been really scrapped for time. Look, I appreciate the extra content, but those resources should have gone into something better like the level design of the main game. There's also an alt artwork of flower power for you freaks out there. Other cheat codes return too, like God mode, which is really cool to use in this game just like it was in the previous game, especially if you get infinite weapons and you go into the blimp and start using the lightning. Like, look at this thing I'm doing with Firestarter. It's breaking the level, but it's cool as hell. I think this works because the lightning comes from certain areas of the game, and so whenever you use a lot of lightning, it actually levitates your car up, and so you end up somehow flying while the game is literally dying. You see the frame rate destroying itself right there. I think that was a pretty neat feature that I found. I don't really see people talking about this. Oh, and Minion returns as a playable character, but sadly he's the only playable boss despite having 3 of them in the game. Probably a product of Rush development. He does play similar to Twisted Metal 2, except of course the engine kind of messes with his controls, but he still is very fast for a giant character. I tell you what isn't Rush though, and it's the OST. Well, it couldn't be Rush because the song's already out at the time, because Rob freaking Zombie has his music in the game, and it always kicks ass when it plays. Having Meet the Creeper play in the blimp stage during the final battle is freaking awesome, dude. Like, it really gets you hyped. But again, I just wish it wasn't in this game. There's also songs from Pitch Shifter, and they're pretty good too. Obviously, I can't play these songs in the video, but it's cool that Twisted Metal was able to get these musicians in the game. I just wish they both weren't regulated to this game or Twisted Metal 4. Spoiler alert for that. Now, before we move on to multiplayer, I want to talk about some of the cut content from the game. Now, some of the footage you are seeing is from the PlayStation Museum channel, and thanks to them, we have a history on plenty of PlayStation games, so go check them out with a link in the description. Now, the reason why I bring up the PlayStation Museum's channel is because if you go to the cutting room floor, aka the site that covers cut content from games, this guy is like carrying that entire Twisted Metal 3 page. Like, I think most of the content is from him, specifically in his videos, so shout out to him for keeping us in the know-how when it comes to Twisted Metal 3. What I find interesting is that a lot of the levels are going to be bigger, with more to do in them before release. Check out Washington DC here. It's still flat, but at least there's some monuments on the map. North Pole is going to be completely different with whole rows surrounding Santa's workshop. Hangar 18 may have originally been called Area 51 at one point, and it has more structures at the top of the map instead of what we got in the final version. And there is another unfinished level called San Francisco. This may have been originally the first level over Hollywood. Still couldn't get out of LA, huh? Oh well, guess it's a trilogy effect. Also, as you can see in some of the footage, there was an early racer named Postal that was just a UPS driver. Now, you already know why that was cut from the game. You know damn well UPS did not want their trucks being blown up in the game like this. And lastly, there's a BMW 3 that seems to be a placeholder for Spectre, a character who actually made it into the game. That's some interesting content left out of the game, though my concern was the levels. I wondered if they were just too big for the action. I mean, this game has 4-player multiplayer if you have the multi-tap on your PS1, and when you take that into account, that means that each of the levels needs to be able to support 4 simultaneous players on the screen and still have the game running at a consistent frame rate and just running at all. So I guess with the crunch, it does make sense why the levels were simplified to hell and back. It's just too bad that most of them became unsalvageable because of it. Now, there's one more thing I didn't mention, but I'm saving that for the last part of the video. But before that, let's deep dive into the multiplayer. You know, I called this a deep dive, but this really is just twinkling your toes in the shallow end of the pool. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, man. To no one's surprise, with the gameplay being trash, the multiplayer is freaking garbage as well. Oh, it's more tolerable, but hey, that's any game with multiplayer in it. Me and my homie did a co-op run, and we didn't even last past Washington, DC. Part of it was because we were sucking at the game, and part of it was because we were bored out of our minds and just wanted to go back and play Twisted Metal 2. It's fun to laugh at, but you just want to play older games or a better game instead of playing this. There aren't even any multiplayer exclusive levels either, so you're stuck playing on the same terrible levels. I will say, while I got no footage of it, there is a 4-player multiplayer mode as I mentioned earlier if you have the multi-tap, and honestly, I can see that being really fun with 4 people around, even if the game is trash. I mean, you can probably laugh at all each other while you're trying to see what you're trying to do in the game in the first place, but I never got to experience it, but maybe y'all did, so let me know if it was good or if you had any fun with it in the comments if you tried it. Today, Twisted Metal 3 is seen as the bad stepchild of the Twisted Metal series, meant to be forgotten and abandoned by its father, the original devs, and by the fans, its mother, if you can even count the fans as a mother. Because you see, the original devs completely shafted the game. They shafted both 3 and 4 because they didn't work on them. And now, I don't think that that this game should have been written off completely, even if it is the worst. Despite the immense hate for this game online, there are still many Twisted Metal fans that enjoyed this game, mostly because of playing with family and friends, and this was the first Twisted Metal game for many people because it was also the one that sold the most. And it was also at the start of that era of like the second half or the second reboot of the PlayStation's life, where you had a bunch of new series coming in that got fans in, like Spyro and Tony Hawk Pro Skater and Ape Escape, things like that. So it was entering a larger player base when it dropped on the shelf. And I'll say this, if you never played Twisted Metal 1 or 2, you may not have many issues with the game. I'll admit it. It's not a bad game on its own merits. You see, despite the short development time and despite the crunch and the whole mess behind the development of Twisted Metal 3, it is a very polished game. And it's very commendable that a game that was in this state in development actually turned out to be really well polished. The graphics even improved in Twisted Metal 3. I mean, look at Sweet Tooth's head. It's no longer just a 2D sprite, and all of the car models have way more polygons than before. On paper, with these improvements, the game should have been better than 2. But all of those other factors, the messed up physics, the terrible story, and the messed up controls, make it one of the worst Twisted Metal experiences ever. And that the fact that 3 was slapped across this title is honestly an insult to the previous 2 games. It's not just that the devs did not understand what Twisted Metal was trying to be, but it was also that they wanted to go in a completely different direction despite getting notes from the old team. Well, congratulations, you failed on that aspect. And you know what? In some ways, I see what they wanted to do. They wanted 3 to be this big wrap up to the trilogy. Not that this would be the end, but that it would cap off the previous 2 games. I mean, this game was originally going to be called Calypso's Revenge. The stages are some of the last untouched areas in the world. Bosses from the old games come back, and even Darktooth was supposed to be in the game. And hell, Calypso was going to be the final boss instead of Primeval. I mean, they would just swap the character model out, but he would have been the final boss. I mean, think about it like this. The last level was Calypso's blimp on his home turf. We were supposed to take down Calypso for good, or at least what some of the racers thought it was for good, because again, this was supposed to be Calypso's revenge. If you notice, everybody's motives, almost everybody's motives in the game boiled down to, I want to get revenge on Calypso. In the previous game, they all had different motives. The only ones that wanted revenge were characters like Outlaw, who Calypso directly messed with. But now everybody wants to smoke with Calypso. And so you're thinking, who's going to step up to the plate? Who's going to take down the big bad of the previous 3 games? The one that's been twisting everybody's freaking wishes to stop him. I mean, if someone really wanted to kill him, if they just gave him a wish to kill himself, he would just twist it to make them kill themselves. And that could have been the whole story. All these characters doing everything they can to get a wish that would stop Calypso after they beat him, and it just ended up in their demise. They would all die. But it would be in such an entertaining way that it would make you feel good about the ending you got. I don't know, something like how Mr. Grimm starves to death after taking all the souls in the world. Something like that. But then you would have only character that could take him down, and that would be none other than Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth would just cut all the bullshit and cut Calypso down. And that would be the end of Calypso's reign on Twisted Metal. And now Sweet Tooth would take over as the new leader of Twisted Metal and probably have a more gruesome tournament than what Calypso had. And then you could have this post-credit scene where you have Krista Sparks getting ready years later to take down Sweet Tooth for killing her father, and also enter the tournament to stop Sweet Tooth's madness. And the world is in an even more messed up state than it was before. Hell, you could even have post-credit scene of Calypso rising from his grave or something like that, showing that he could be a playable character in the next game. But that would have wrapped up the trilogy so much better than the garbage that we got right here. This was absolutely garbage, bro. You got characters doing things that they never should be doing. I know people are gonna be like, it's the story, I care about the gameplay, but a lot of Twisted Metal's appeal, a lot of its fan base is from its story. It's from the story that it had. And when you mess that up, you mess up the feel for a lot of people. The gameplay could be excellent, but that story, if it's trash, I mean, man, it brings the game down a lot. Because what this was some Looney Tunes garbage. Actually, I take that back. I'm sorry, Looney Tunes. I know you have more class than the crap that we got here. And I know Twisted Metal was kind of goofy before, but this is just, it's not even funny. It's not even entertaining. This isn't the Twilight Zone-esque stories that we had in the past. And that is Twisted Metal's biggest problem. It fell off because it wanted to be so much different than what the fans had expected, to what the series had built up to in terms of what Twisted Metal was. And I don't know if it was because they were too scared because some of the endings were dark. I don't know if it's because they did not like the darker direction that some of these endings would go, like them having these characters still kind of die in some gruesome ways in these endings. I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. No one really has come out and said that, but they just just weren't Twisted Metal. And when you add that on top of the piss poor gameplay, piss poor level design, you get probably the worst Twisted Metal game in the series, because besides Rob Zombie on the soundtrack and Pitch Shifter, I mean, Rob Zombie, he is carrying this game on his back, breaking his back, carrying this game like freaking Atlas carrying the damn planet. All right, you have nothing else that is really redeeming about this Twisted Metal game, and that is why this was the downfall of Twisted Metal 3 and the Twisted Metal series in general. But again, that's only one side of the story, and that's what I tell you now as a person who can look back at the series and see what it was and see how it compares now. But when it comes to people who grew up back then, because I was only born in 99, I can't really talk about it. You guys are the ones that grew up back then. You guys are the ones I see in certain comment sections talking about how you still like this game somehow. And I genuinely want to know, what do you guys think of this game? If you like it, if you really like it, I'm being genuine, I'm not trying to roast you or anything. What made you like it? And let me know. Was it the multiplayer? Did you actually like the endings? Did you like some of the levels? Did you like some of the cars? Did you like some of the characters? Let me know, because I really want to know what some of the redeeming qualities is, man. Because guys, I don't like shit talk. I really don't. All right, you can only say a game is garbage so many times unless you're AVGN before it starts to get boring, and I feel like I'm running out of it in this video. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys are going to want to tune in whenever I cover Twisted Metal 4. It won't be the next video, but I will cover it at a certain point, because you're going to hear something that's going to shock you coming from me, especially after what you heard from this game. With that being said, until then, this is the J Blast Network signing out. And don't forget, you better believe, baby. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the Kool-Aid Man, baby. Oh, yeah.
I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.